Hello and welcome back to Rule the Game. In this video I'm going to show you how to play Fromage, or in English, simply cheese. This game is by Ben Rosset and Matthew O'Malley. It is for 1 to 4 players, starting at age 14, and it lasts about 40 minutes. In the video I'm only going to cover the 2 to 4 player version, the standard version. If you want to play the solo mode or use the advanced cards, please have a look at instruction manuals for that. As usual, we'll start with how to score the game, then we'll show you how to play the game. I'll give you some hints for your first game, and then I'll show you how to set this game up. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. But now let's get started with Fromage.
Rule the game.
Fromage is a worker placement game. In this game, you have one big circle in the middle where all the players lay down their little cheese tiles to gain points in 4 different sections of the game board. In addition, every player has their own personal board where they can also gain some victory points. We will start first with the festival. In the festival, you're trying to get as many of your cheese pieces adjacent to each other as possible. We're going to have a look here at the orange tiles. The orange tiles have here 2 adjacent to each other, but there are all these French flags in this board here too, and the French flags always count as anybody's flag, anybody's cheese. So in this case, this piece of cheese here is also connected to these 2, so we have 4 that are connected to each other. For 4 connected cheeses, we get 6 victory points here. Now let's move on to the cheese store here. Here, what matters is how many cheeses do you have on different shelves. There are 6 different shelves here, and as you can see, orange has on this, and this shelf their cheeses, so there are 4 different shelves. They get 9 victory points here. Next, we go to the bistro. On the bistro, you're trying to place your cheeses on more valuable platters, and of course the golden platters are the most valuable platters. You see here the score for golden platters is always the highest. Then the silver, of course, is a little less. Those are silver platters here. And then you have the bronze platters that are the cheapest of all of them. Now, depending on how many tables you could fill with your cheeses, if you have 2 cheeses on one table, like here, you get an advance bonus. So here, if I have 1 table with 2 cheeses on it of my own color, I get higher points than if I have 0 tables with my cheeses on it. As you can see, if I get 2 or even 3 and more tables with my cheeses on them, and always 2 of them on there, then I get even more points from the different cheeses around there. Now, it doesn't matter anymore for the points afterwards. Once you have figured out that you have 1 table with 2 cheeses, now we've moved on to this row here, and I can count 1, 2 platters with bronze plates, that's 1 point each. We have 1, 2 silver platters, that's 3 each. And then we have 1 golden platter, that's a 5. And you sum these up for the points in the bistro. And finally, we have the different towns here. This is where you're trying to get a majority of your cheeses for a certain region. So for example, if we look at the purple region, here, blue has the majority. They'll gain this little token here. Me as the orange player, I have a majority here on the orange region. Here I get this little tile for myself. And down here on the pink region, yellow and orange are actually tied with 2 each. So we both get a share of this. We turn this around to the equal sign. And with the equal sign, we now get 2 victory points for this. And over here, for the 2 people that we have, we're going to gain here the 6 victory points. So this is part 1, where you get points. Then you also get points on your personal board. There are 3 different ways you can get points on your personal board. One is here with structures. And you see over here, you see these structured tiles. If you have enough structured tiles to cover these 5 pieces of wood up here, I only have 4, but if I had 5, I could get 1 victory point for every single green card, that's an order here, that I've accomplished. Those are all those. Unfortunately, I didn't have this covered, so I don't get these extra points. Having said that, I still get points for these orders that I've fulfilled. And you see I have 5 cards. And you see here for 5 cards, I get 7 victory points. And then lastly, you also have here fruit that you either eat as fruit with the cheese or you eat it as jam with the cheese. And here you multiply the number of fruit items that you have on the cheese platter here and also on the jam platter. You multiply those two, you get victory points for that. So I have 1 times 2, which is 2 victory points from the fruit. You also have all of this on your scoring pad. And as you can see on the very bottom, you'll also get 1 victory point per 2 unused resources, which in this case are here the fruit, the 3 animals that I have, and the 4 structures that I haven't used. So for these 8 total that I have, you'll get 4 victory points. You'll add them all up, you get a total number, and whoever has the most points wins. Fromage is a round-based game where all the players play simultaneously in each round. There are 2 main actions that you can play on the main board in every round. Now each player will sit right behind one of the sections of the board, and they're allowed to play only on that one section of the board. So this player here will only play here on the villages and not on the other 3 parts. You'll get to those later. For each action, every player has these 3 worker pieces here, where you have a soft cheese, which is the white one, a hard cheese is the yellow one, and then a blue cheese, the blue one. So what they do now is that they take 2 of their workers, they place one of them up here on the resource part. You see up here always how many resources you get, depending on where you place your worker. So if I place my worker here, I get 2 structures. I'm going to take those 2 structures and I place those 2 structures on my personal board right here. And then I get to place a second one, a second cheese, somewhere on this board here where I'm later going to get scored. Now here you have to make sure that you only place a cheese that matches the color that's underneath in those fields. And every time you place a worker on the main board here, on the scoring part of the board, you will first place one of these cheese tokens on it. So let's say what I could do potentially is I place here a cheese token on this hard cheese, and then I cover it with the hard cheese worker, like this. This last worker will stay out. We can only place 2 at a time. Now next, when every player is done, we rotate the main board by 90 degrees. So now I have a new section in front of me, and as you saw, I rotated it in clockwise order. So now I can play on this section of the board in this round. Before we get started in placing the 2 workers here, I first get to retrieve all the workers that are somewhere else on the board and that are facing me. As you can see, the one worker that we've placed just before, this worker is now facing this player here. And so before we start placing our workers here in the section, we retrieve this worker and we can now use it again. As you can see, when you retrieve this worker, you leave the cheese token in the field because that's what you're going to need later on to score your points. So as you can see, you can strategically place your cheeses, your workers, on the board so that you can retrieve them faster. And once you retrieve them, you can use them again. Now, as you can see also with this one, you got 2 resources, but I can't retrieve it because it points towards this section, which means in the next round, I'll get to retrieve this one here, but I can't do it right now. Again, you'll place the worker somewhere up here. That means you're going to get 1 card. You put the card openly over here. And I get to place a blue cheese. And let's say we're going to place a blue cheese here. But as you can see, there is a symbol here for jam. So if I want to place my worker here on this jam, then I would have to pay one of my fruit over here. I need to have fruit to actually place a cheese token on a cheese tile that has a jam or a fruit on it. because as a jam, I need to move one of my fruit resources onto the jam part over here. Then I place my worker on it, and that will be my turn for this round. Now that I've played here this section, again we rotate by 90 degrees. Again, we retrieve the two workers that are facing us, or however many that are facing us, and we get to place two workers again. This is the whole game. You place your two workers, you rotate, you retrieve, place two workers, and so on, until the first player has played all of their cheese tokens. They announce this to the round. That will be the last round that everybody plays, and after that, you'll score. Please note that at the end of the game, when a player has placed their last cheese token that they have available, every player at the end of that turn then returns their worker, but they will leave the cheese token on the field where it already is. What that means is that when you realize that somebody's going to finish right now, you better put out a couple cheeses on gold platters or golden shelves, because you don't have to wait 3 rounds anymore to get those workers back and get these cheese tokens placed. They'll be there right away. Now, what I haven't fully explained to you yet is the personal board. I've already shown you here how this is done with the fruit and where you have to place the fruit on either the strawberry here or on the jam over here. It doesn't matter what kind of fruit you have, just like it doesn't matter up here what kind of animal you pick up. They're different animals. The key is fruits down here, animals in the middle. That's all. Same with the structures, by the way. Now, when we look at the orders, you saw before that I picked up this green card. And you see here on this card, it explains you something about a cheese. But what is more important here is that up top here, you see a kind of cheese. In this case, it's a hard cheese on a bronze platter. So let's say you have this card open, and you can have several cards open, several orders open at the same time. If I want to fulfill this order, I would have to place now a hard cheese onto a bronze platter. In this case, it's a bronze shelf. I could do this. I could put my worker on top of it. Now I've fulfilled the order, and I can put this one over here to the fulfilled orders. There are 2 rules to follow. One is you can only fulfill one order at a time with one worker when you place it. The second one is when you get a new order, you cannot use a worker you placed before to actually fulfill the order. Whenever you receive an order, you'll have to fulfill it afterwards. This is it about the orders. Now let's have a look at the animals. Looking at the animals, you see that there are 4 different shelters. On each shelter, as before on this card, you see a can of cheese with a can of platter. And you also see a number on a wooden shield. Now the number on the wooden shield is the requirement, how many animals you need in this shelter. So in this case, you need 2 animals. I only have 1, but let's say I had 2. I need to place 2 of the animals in here, and you can do this anytime during the game. But you need to know that when you place your animals here, you now have to do the bonus action, because for animals you can do a bonus action. And the bonus action here is that I have to place a cheese on a blue cheese field on a bronze platter. In this case, and I don't need a worker for this, I could, for example, place this cheese token right here. And you see, the more you pay, here goes 3, 4, and 5, the more you pay, the more expensive the cheese gets, because here it's on a gold platter, and here you can even choose what kind of cheese and what kind of platter it is. And last but not least, we have here the structures. As for the animals that we saw before, or the fruit, whenever you pick up a resource from here, you will place this new resource that you've picked up here on the side of the board. And then when you have enough resources here also, you can unlock a special ability. Now, you see here these wooden structures on these 4 fields that you have. the number of these wooden structures tells you how many structures you need to unlock the ability. So for example, for this ability here, I have to place 2 structures on it. And from now on, I will always have the ability to actually get a fruit here if I can place a worker on it. Now this is a third worker that I could place. However, you first need to have a third worker in your hand. And that's sometimes kind of difficult. But you would have this ability now. Just like when over here, if you're able to cover these 3 structures with 3 different structures on top, then whenever you gain an animal, you gain a second animal. Or if you gain 2 animals, you get a third animal. And over here, if you place a cheese token in the cheese store, wherever it is, right here, then you'll also get a structure that you can place over here. And lastly, we've seen that in the scoring section already. If you can cover this with 5 structures, then you get an extra point for every single order that you fulfilled. And that's already it. You have your main board where you play stuff, two workers at a time every round. You have your personal board where you can do stuff sometimes anytime, sometimes depending on where you place a worker, that's for the fruit, and sometimes you have special abilities that you get from the personal board. Now please note, while when you place a worker on most of the parts of the main board, nothing really happens at this point. There's an exception with the cheese store. In the cheese store, you'll get an immediate bonus on some of the shelves, and those are the shelves here on the left. So for example, on the silver shelf, you get any resource for free right away. On the golden shelf, you get 2 resources that are different resources right away. And down here in the bronze one, you can actually spend or return an unused resource to get a different resource. On the right-hand side, you'll get victory points, and you have to remember to get those at the end of the game. And here are some hints for the first game. Of course, it matters where you place your workers. If you place your workers on a bronze plate, you will always be able to retrieve them in the next round because right here, they're on a bronze shelf. If I turn this around, I can already retrieve this one now as the player over here. Now, having said that, all the bronze plates or the bronze shelves, they give you the least amount of points. If you want to have the most amount of points, you'll always have to place your worker in a way that they're going to be facing away from you. And they're only going to return to you after 3 rounds. So you're going to have to balance this and figure out if you want to have always a worker available, even 2 or 3, or if you're willing to get more valuable cheeses, but then you have to wait longer for your worker. Of course, it never makes sense to have 3 workers at the same time unless you want to keep playing with the bonus structure that you have over here where you can place your 3rd worker. I suggest you don't do that. I suggest you go for some expensive cheeses, for some golden platters, golden shelves, even though you have to wait longer, even if that means that there will be some rounds where you only have 1 worker to place, or sometimes even none. But you need to focus on stuff. You can't only get the bronze plates, the bronze shells, because if you do this, you will not get enough points. The golden ones are much more valuable because they always have a special ability or more points. In some cases, they give you more abilities to connect fields in the festival, for example. Or over here, the golden ones give you more regions that you cover with one of them. So they're totally worth it. Don't do only those, of course, but it doesn't hurt if you have 1 or 2 rounds where you can't place anything. And as I just said, focus on what you're doing. You won't be able to win everything everywhere. If you're trying to focus on the villages, then focus on the villages. Then maybe skip on the tables or on the festival. If you want to focus on the festival, maybe you skip out on the villages. You can't do all 4 at the same time. But where you go, focus and try to make it really strong. And then try to use the animals, if you have the animals, try to use them properly at the right point in time so that you get these bonus cheeses where you don't even have to place a worker. You could technically also have a round where you don't have a worker available, but you have the animals, and you just use the animals to place one of your tokens anyway, even though you don't have a worker. So this is how you try to do it. And if you have orders, you don't have to fulfill an order right away. You have time. You have time until the very end. Just don't forget it, because you can't fulfill more than one order with one worker, but you don't have to fulfill it right away. And that's Fromage. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please subscribe to the channel. And up next will be the game setup section. To set up the game, take the 4 sections of the round board here. You'll see that they connected here like this. You'll first take each section, and there are these slider parts that show you here how many players, for how many players this part is necessary. And then it shows you also a number. For the first games, it's recommended that you take the 1, but the backside would also have a 2 for a second and later game when you're a little bit more advanced. You slide those in. You do the same for the other 3 sections. Always, of course, the same number for the same number of players. Later on, you can mix and match whatever you want. Then you put that puzzle together in that circle here, like this. You'll take the central piece right here, put it in any kind of direction, right here in the middle. You then place it so that each player sits in front of one of the sections, like this player does right now with this section. Each player then gets a personal player board. Each player also takes here their 3 workers and all the 15 cheese tokens that they have. Then we need to prepare also the villages by placing these little tokens here on each of the open fields that are available here, like this. And each player also gets starting resources. It shows you up here where the starting resources are. In this case, what you get is this player here gets always from the section to the left from them, they get 2 of these resources, in this case 2 cards that they put over here in this case. Those are the two orders that they already have. And then you get 1 resources from a cross, which is here, the structures. So they take that structure and put it right here. And now we're ready to get started.